The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you a songwriter? Are you looking to turn your songwriting passion into a full-time gig? Whether you are just at the start of your songwriting journey or a seasoned industry professional, this show is made for you. Welcome to the Songwriter Show, bringing together songwriting news, interviews, and community. Now, welcome your host, Sarantos.
Ed Roman is an award-winning singer-songwriter, performer, and multi-instrumentalist from Shelburne, Ontario, Canada. Blurring the lines between pop, rock, folk, and country music genres, Ed's uniquely crafted songs have received regular rotation on more than 100 terrestrial radio stations across North America and more than 400 stations worldwide. Ed, what a fascinating story you have.
Hey, Sarantos, how are you, my friend? It's great to be here on Artist Songwriter.
Tell me what new project you're involved in right now.
Well, I, as you know, Red Omen has been out for a while. There's been a bunch of singles as well as Lay Went Down that you said was part of Hard Songs. I'm writing a new grouping of songs and grabbing stuff that I've written already that nobody's heard to put together that, feeling you get, Sarantos, when you go, these songs belong together just like these words and ideas belong together. And that's the kind of way I work instinctually. All of a sudden you get that feeling and start going, it's time that this stuff all starts making sense. So it's a new project. It's called, there's a bunch of new singles, but A Recipe for Perpetual Spring. So I'm happy to be recording and working on new stuff, as I said, and just, working on my craft, man.
That's awesome, man. What inspires you? Is it when you're touring, when you're doing a gig, when you're home alone, when you're enjoying the Canadian snow? What inspires you, man?
I think it's always happening. You know what I mean? Like, Saranto, it's like you react to something, whether it's something you see on television, something you hear in a conversation, a good part of your day, a bad part of your day. I think that when you grab a pen or pencil and do however you're going to work with, in your medium, for me, it's still paper and pencil. I find that cathartic release about the thinking process behind it, the catalyst for it. And all of a sudden, you start putting and piecing together these things that inspire you because of those feelings. There's always some trailhead to begin at. And what I've learned is that if I let those feelings pull me through the experience, sort of a new concept for me personally sort of starts to happen as far as songwriting goes.
This is why I love talking to songwriters, because it's fascinating to hear what inspires you. Tell me a little bit about what is the coolest story that comes to mind right now?
The Wild Gnome. I like to play with words and color things in ways. And it was sort of like a song that was written about some of these neo-hippies that kind of used to come to our shows way back when. But it was like, it kind of conjured that feeling of this sort of epic kind of, dark mid-18th century sort of figure that came out of a bush somewhere and started to, tell you stories while sipping some strange tea. So for me, it was like I like the weirdness of it, and not only that, it kind of makes people feel uncomfortable, which is sometimes a good thing because that sometimes means you're learning something in some kind of a way. So I'm proud of those lyrics, but at the same time, there's other things where I'm like, a tune like "I Found God." I'd rather be like an epitaph tune, something scrolled across a gravestone of mine, because it's how I feel about, the world. I'm a neo-pantheist nonconformist. So to me, Mother Earth is very godlike.
That sounds wonderful, Ed. People are at various stages of their career. I know personally when I first started writing lyrics, there's a difference to me between the muse that spoke and the editing mode of songwriting. What advice do you have for people that are just starting to write lyrics? They might come up with something like, I love you, yes I do, and they think that's a wonderful line. What advice would you have for someone that wrote that line? What would you tell them?
Well, keep going. It's a nice beginning. But for me, like so often, it's stream of consciousness, because I'm thinking so many things about that original idea that for me just to, say, okay, well, that's good, is sort of not enough sometimes. And I have to keep writing, and sometimes there are pages of things that I will scribble, but then go, well, like I really like this stanza, the way this sort of came out, but I'm going to change a few things, because if I flip this in a certain way, I actually like the way that it's sort of playing off the next line in a rhyming scheme. But it wasn't intentional. It just sort of happened by me noticing the flipping of the phrase. And that's, I guess, what I mean. If you keep playing with it, the end result becomes this sort of like adventure, and you've created something completely new as a result of and that doesn't mean you have to spend 10 years writing lyrics, but you have to kind of come to that solidification point for yourself. But keep going so that it's not so, a welcome doormat kind of idea.
Sure, man, absolutely. Ed, what was the first job you ever had?
Well, working on a farm. I mean, I grew up on a farm. Some of the first jobs I had were, baling hay, milking cattle, moving big animals around, cutting hay, grain, wheat, corn. Then I kind of broke out of that sort of family mold that I had, and I wanted to do other things. And, labor-intensive jobs, construction stuff, cleaning up sites, things that were like that for a period of time. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, I really want to focus on music. So then when I went to school to study music, I was like, well, I'm going to start teaching. And teaching gave me that vehicle to continually stay around music. It taught me so much because it put me into positions where it's like, hey, can you teach guitar? And I'm like, okay. And I hadn't done it before. And then after you take a kid, through book 1 through 9, you've all of a sudden learned how to do all this stuff. So I guess that's, I gravitated to more things around my craft. But now as a 47-year-old man, I'm actually like farming more. And that actually connects me more to my thinking process behind writing, ironically.
That's a wonderful story. Have you ever written any songs about farming or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I've written a lot of songs about personal experiences, but they're not, this is not like, hey, this happened to Ed on this night of the week and da-da-da-da-da. I wrote a song called A Few More Days, which was about what would be like to take a ride in a UFO with aliens, and see the world and the cosmos from a different sort of perspective. But my whole family back in the late 60s had a sort of a mass experience with a strange light that landed in between our barn and our house, and it was reported by the airport and the David Dunlop Observatory up here in Canada. They were tracking these unidentified objects. So for me, that part of that allegory in my family has always been there, and I was like, well, this is kind of how it's related to me, my family, and my existence. So that farming, it happened on the farm, so I guess that's how I'm kind of tying it in.
Yeah, that is fun. What's the strangest compliment you've ever gotten from a reviewer, from a fan, from anyone? Yeah,
I don't understand this. Those are some of the best. Those are some of the best ones, because then I'm like, okay, that's good, because that means maybe you'll be thinking more about it. I always loved those lyrics when I was growing up. I don't know about you, but you'd hear something and then you'd ask your older brother or cousin or parent, what did they mean by that? And consequently, it led you down this path of like figuring out more about the song, where it came from, the history behind it. And that's, I guess, what I kind of like about when somebody says something. Even when somebody, if they came up and be like, I don't really like your music that much, I'll say, thank you. They look at me and like, what? And I'm like, thank you. I'm so glad you have an opinion. I'm always trying to flip it in that regard, man.
I understand that, and that's a great point. One of the things I've always struggled with is trying to figure out, is this a winner? You can ask friends or family, but that's kind of biased. I know there's reverb and audio kite, but what's your process, Ed, when you write a song? How do you decide if it's a winner?
Well, yeah, I mean, Michael Jack, he's my producer and friend, and yes, he's definitely a confidant, my studio comrade. But I guess in the process of writing, and you got to feel this too, Sorrentos, it's like the same feeling that sparks you when you start to write and takes you through there. And at the end, when you finally finish that sort of editing process and melody starts to come out and you're running it on an instrument, whether it's a keyboard, a guitar, a drum kit, a bass, it doesn't matter what it is, you become then sort of reinvigorated by that same feeling, knowing that this same search through melody, chord structure, and composition is the same kind of thing. That's sort of either allowing that framework to exist for the lyrical content or vice versa. Sometimes it happens. Or even if you're not writing lyrics and it's a melody-based song, sometimes either chord progression comes and you're like, well, wait, I'm hearing this all of a sudden in this chord movement. So you start to actually fumble through these little melody ideas, or those melody ideas start to develop into a complete melody that now need to be supported by chord. So I think it's like you should never put like a method on it. I think the important thing is you just keep writing all the time, and that for me, if I'm doing it on a guitar, I'm going to start tracking it that way, and then I build around it. Or if I take it to a band situation and I'm like, well, here's the idea. What are you guys feeling? That's also important for me. What are other musicians hearing when I'm presenting this to them? Because it's that same sort of cross-referencing of feelings and ideas. That it's a new growth, a new period in the song.
Absolutely, Ed. I agree with you. Do you have a preference? Lyrics first, music first, or have you done it both ways?
I just go with it, man. Like I got like 25, 30 things I'm working on a melody-wise kind of thing, and at the same time I'm scribbling unfinished things I'm looking at here, like, oh yeah, this still kind of needs some kind of work on the chorus, and but I'm really happy with the way that began. But so for me, I learned not to put a method on it. That's my kind of method. Is that like I follow whatever starts to come first, and then support it as best as I can.
Okay. If you could go into a room and meet any musician, past or present, dead or alive, who would it be?
Man, it's a tough question. If I asked you the same question, you'd be like, I'm sure, right? But like, I'm a bass player by trade. Okay, I love playing bass. I've been playing it since I was like 13 years old. Jaco Pastorius, he's no longer with us. I would definitely love to have sat in a room, played with him, talked with him, hung out with him, picked his brain, listened to just whatever he had to say, because he was a huge, huge influence on me in terms of mechanical growth as well. And,
sure.
And also, development. He turned me on to Mingus. He turned me on to Gary Peacock, all these other bass players that I had never heard of before. So he was a huge mentor to me. But I also have to say lyrically, man, like, Tom Waits.
Yeah.
It just dropped me off in an alley next to a garbage can so we can talk for an hour. I would be so happy,
I have to tell you, I saw that documentary of Pastorius on Netflix, and it was amazing to me. I never thought about that kind of influence on bass. It just brought it in a whole new life. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was wonderful.
Robert Trujillo from Metallica, he had put it together. I followed the whole process.
It was crazy.
And it was crazy because when I was in Austin and we were playing, it was actually opening. And we just got into town after the fact. That night was like South by Southwest, as you mentioned, the Red Gorilla thing. There was a rodeo going on. Jimmy Kimmel was shooting 3 nights there. That whole thing, like the city was just like humming. It was insane. But I wanted to see it. I didn't catch it until you did on Netflix till after the fact and it came out.
Mm-hmm. There's probably a lot of newbies out there listening. If you could talk for a second about scams, how do you tell newbies or anyone how to avoid scams in the music business? They're all over the place.
The same advice that people gave to me that I should have listened to, which was, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And I've been in trouble, dealing with lawyers in New York, trying to get out of issues with this company that messed me up in LA. And, I think the most important thing is that you have to keep writing. You have to keep being creative for yourself. And what starts to happen, and you can't expect it to happen overnight, is that little doors and windows and cracks start to open. And when those do, Get in there, meet people, talk to them, talk about what you do. The most important thing about our craft is, aside from people buying a tune or listening to it or streaming it or whatever they may do, they're also intrigued by why. This is why a show like yours is wonderful, because we get the opportunity to explain why. And I think, like special interest shows that we might watch, maybe in programming, we'd go, well, yeah, that's cool. Look at how they built that. And that's almost more important than the actual thing that you might buy, because you're fascinated by the process. Do that. Get involved and talk to people. It's the best thing that you can do. And before you know it, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I agree completely. And that's the whole point to this show, is no one talks about songwriters. No one focuses on them. And we both know that people buy lyrics, they do work for hire agreements, and you see these famous artists say, when I wrote this song, this was my inspiration. But in the industry, people know they never wrote that song. They had nothing to do with it. What do you think about what's happening with songwriters nowadays with their diminished royalties? Is it a thankless profession? Is it a dying breed?
You know, there's always a bell curve, man. And I start to realize this. I start to go, you know, Paul Simon said, every generation throws a hero up the pop charts, right? And with that, same thing with the medium. It goes through a change, a new deciphering, a new figuring out. And then as a result, the cream starts to rise to the top. The bell curve changes. Something new begins. The internet has given us the ability right now, you and I, you're in Chicago, I'm in Ontario, Canada, north of Toronto. We could have people listening in Singapore, Germany, Ireland, Mexico. That you couldn't have that option as personally friendly to every individual or person that wanted to start and support radio. This is a whole new era and a whole new time of birth, and when things are really cool, anybody can kind of check out what's not in the mainstay, because the mainstay is always going to be being pushed. But in the undercurrent, that's where all that new stuff is. And I think with streaming and those kinds of things, it was kind of everybody's at the cash grab point. How do we make this work? And everybody wants a piece of the pie. But I think that the pie has already been baked and eaten. The new thing that's starting to happen is, again, like I'm saying, a show like this and other shows that are like this, internet radio, people that are developing those old, grassroots fan bases like old radio had. That's what's making this environment exciting. And other people that tune in, they go, hey, that was cool. It was refreshing. It didn't seem so commercial. Yeah,
it's got to be authentic, man. That's the thing you don't see much of anymore.
Right. Yeah. And you don't need a license. There's a tower, huge amplifier. I mean, it's great campus radio and university college. They're still doing it. But they're also, they're streaming. They're doing their shows the exact same way. But that's the beauty of it. And I think with any new medium, people are alarmed, because it's well, how do we make the old cash from yesteryear with the new stuff? But the new stuff says we need to do a lot of other things in order to get to that point. We need to be patient about what that is. The important things we keep doing it, and then we look back and go, man, I'm glad we did that.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. Okay, I got one last question for you, Ed. What's your superpower?
Vegetable man. I'm a farmer, man. I mean, I can grow anything, and I can grow it well. And I'm proud to say that my parents gave me that skill and ability. And man, between my wife and I mean, my brother grows a lot of food. My mom still grows a lot of food. She's 81. That's me. I mean, I will be there with the power carrot and onion to support you.
That's awesome. So if you were on The Martian 2 with Matt Damon, you'd be okay? You'd be able to grow anything you want?
I could put Matt Damon to shame.
Let's hear a sampling of your song, Ed.
The Way She Goes.
I could dance a lifetime with my sweet tobacco rose. You could build your nation with dirty hands in denim clothes. And even in our twilight, I think that everybody knows. An open mind, a subtle heart are the only way she goes, and that's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window that that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people acting crazy, that's the way she goes. Have you been singing this song lately? The whistle on your kettle's been chirping, and deep red is the song. Your mortal shackle's been winning battles, I think you've known this all along. The squeaky wheel's been seasoned because the grease price is too high. Just change another channel, it never ever changes, and wave it all goodbye. That's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window, that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people acting crazy, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, sha-la-la-la-la-la, we know it's wrong, but we say it's right. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la, we know it's black, but we say it's white. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, you gotta put up a hell of a fight. Yes, you do. Somewhere in the middle of the ending, so summarize your fears and woes. It's like a fragrant golden season, it purifies you and your soul. I tip my hat to rebels when the newsman calls him foe. And if you check inside your pockets, you'll find it's all just one big show, but that's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window, that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people been acting crazy, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song, that's the way she goes. That's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song, if you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. That's the way she goes.
That's a really cool song. Tell me something about that song that I'm never going to forget.
Dirty hands make clean money. My grandfather always had a way to wield a statement that was so powerful that you'd be thinking about it for a lifetime. And that phrase was really the catalyst for that song being created.
So, where can our listeners find more information about your music, Ed? And where can it be purchased?
edroman.net. You can buy my CDs directly from my website. It also takes you to all my social networking buttons. You can get the CD at Amazon, iTunes. CD Baby has direct shipment to you, so you can get physical copies of the album, which is great because you can hold it in your hand. Look, I'm touching a record. And you get it for Christmas. It's red.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ed, for being on the show.
Hey, Sam, my pleasure, Sorrento's. And Chicago, Toronto, we got the same kind of weather, so I feel your pain.
To listeners who may be artists, if you wish to be on the Author-Songwriter Show, I invite you to submit the interview request form at authorsongwriters.com. Thank you for listening. I hope your own unique story gets heard around the world. My name is Sorrento's. Please join me next time to hear other amazing artists share their fascinating behind-the-scenes stories.
Thank you, Sorrento's.
And now, welcome this week's special guest.
Stuart Anson, born in California, raised in New Jersey, schooled in New York, developed musical skills that are changing up the hip-hop genre. After spending time in Nashville, he released his first full-length album, Hyperactive, in 2011. Currently residing in Savannah, Georgia, while he's developing his newest EP, Iconic, inspired by Shawn Mendes, Pitbull, and Macklemore. Pending the release of his talent is being featured on several radio stations and local clubs in the Low Country. So tell me a little bit about your story, because it sounds very fascinating to me.
Man, obviously I've been all over the country. My family was from LA, so I want to get back there eventually. But when I moved to Nashville is when I really got plugged in with some music guys and started trying to take it to the next level. I actually started off full-fledged as a rapper. I went to school in upstate New York, and I grew up listening to Biggie and Tupac and Nas, and I mean, you name it, from Run the Gamut. I mean, I still listen to Run the Jewels, but when I got to Nashville is when I really started to expand that songwriting. How do you say, like started thinking outside the box. Sure. And trying to expand that from just that simple, like, everything was 16 bars, everything was a rhyme scheme, to now, like, I can do whatever I want. I can change the music. I can put the pre-chorus wherever I want. And I started meeting these guys and songwriters that were like, hey, let's do whatever we want. And that's when I really started to just have fun with it and not quite study it as much as I was just having fun and enjoying writing music.
Sure, that's great. What was the first tune you ever wrote?
Oh man, the first full song I ever wrote was I think it was called Open Road. It was with Nick Riley. I actually did a full length album when I was living in Nashville, and this guy Nick Riley produced it, and I think it was Open Road, and he had a rap verse and I had a rap verse, and we had a chorus on it, and we made it in his bedroom in this 3-bedroom apartment. But
that's cool.
Yeah, it was, we had like a mic with like pillows taped around the mic stand, and like it was definitely
that's awesome.
That like startup kind of setup,
Yeah. That's great, man. We've all been there, and some of us still are, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about who you'd want to be in a room with, a musician, dead or alive.
Oh, there's so many. That question's awesome. I'll tell you one guy that I followed from the start of his career that I catch most people with when I tell him is Sammy Adams. He's a rapper from Boston, and when I was 18 and I was just writing, verses over other people's beats, I was in college. I think he's a year older than me. He dropped Boston's Boy. It was just a short EP. It had, I don't know, 6 songs on it maybe. And just every track on it, like, had this killer vibe. He like sampled some old school classical music on one. And, it was like it was just something different from everything I heard. You know, it wasn't just like drums with someone rapping over it. I definitely I want to get in a room with him at some point. And I mean, I can't be a musician and say I don't want to be in a room with Jimi Hendrix, because I remember reading, because I play a little guitar. I played drums for a little while. I played trumpet for a little while. I've obviously evolved into a songwriter, but I remember reading the article in Rolling Stones. They did that tribute article to Jimmy, and it was Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton were in Germany watching him play, and Jimmy Page said he brushed hands with with Eric Clapton, and they were like little schoolgirls standing in awe watching Jimi Hendrix play. And I was just like, that's baffling to me. Yeah. Like, I couldn't imagine being in the room with someone of that talent and just raw musical skill, I guess. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get started transitioning to a professional status?
Man, it's I'll say it like this. It's weird hearing the question posed that way, because I'm never satisfied with what I do. So like, no matter who I'm in a room with, I'm like, well, this isn't the way I want it, or I can do better. I was actually just texting my producer earlier about a song that we're not putting on this EP. And I was like texting a DJ about redoing a remix of something, and he just texted me and he was like, dude, enough with that song. Let's just write something new. And like, I don't know. It's, I always believed from a young age that like no one made it without a team, because I always studied people I looked up to. Chris Webby, huge influence of mine, a rapper out of Connecticut. Macklemore, obviously a huge influence on the record itself. Pitbull for coming here and just, creating a genre of music, basically. And so once I started assembling that team of people around me, that's when other people were able to get involved, I guess. So I don't think I elevated my status. I think it was a group effort, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, a team is so important. For all the younger musicians out there that aren't quite professional, any advice on how they should avoid scams or being ripped off? I mean, in the industry, they're all around the place. They're around every corner. But any advice or the biggest scam you ever fell prey to that you can warn us about?
Yeah, I was involved in one as well. If you're young and someone's flashing your dream in front of your face, just take 2 steps back and talk to somebody else about it. Because I moved to Nashville. I was 21 years old, and a quote unquote management company puts a record or a contract in front of my face and says, sign here and we won't take any money until you make $5 million. Like, what? I mean, you're flashing my dream in front of my face. I don't know any better. Sure. I can't read a legal contract that's 20 pages long. I don't know any better. And I've learned, I feel old in the music industry, and I'm only 28, just because you look on TV and you listen on radio and you hear, like, Shawn Mendes is a perfect example. Was he 18 years old now? Barely.
Yeah.
I've learned since being, like, there's stuff that I've learned during my process of making music that has become invaluable to me continuing to make music. Like, just asking questions. I mean, as simple as asking for help. Like, if I don't know in my gut what I'm supposed to do in a certain situation, whether it's a contract, sign here, play this show, pay me this amount of money and I'll put you on stage, whatever thing you get approached with, because I've been approached by them all. I used to be, I don't know, maybe it's being a guy or something, but I used to, like, not want to ask for help. And the more I ask for help, the more people are willing to help me. So I ask for help and just take 2 steps back.
That's great advice, man. I think you're right. Nobody really wants to ask for help, and when they get burned, you get burned once, twice, you kind of almost get back even further into your cocoon, and you don't want to ask for help even more. And you're right, that's the wrong thing to do. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your songwriting process. Do you do music first, lyrics first, or does it vary?
It varies. So my specific style that I've kind of stumbled onto is it's interesting because I've got these big melodies for the choruses and these melodies for the pre-choruses, and then I've got these rap verses. I always end up writing the raps after the fact, like after we've got production done, after we've got the pre-chorus in place, after we've got the chorus in place. But as far as writing the choruses, me and Sam wrote Skyscraper with a guitar over FaceTime, and he just strummed a couple chords, and we wrote the hook first. Iconic, we wrote he produced the track first, and then we went back after the fact and tried to find something that fit it. Mm-hmm. I used to always write after the music, and then part of that thinking outside the box in Nashville, I credit a lot of it to my buddy Marcel, actually, who's a big songwriter in Nashville, and he had me trying to write country for a while just to expand my vocabulary and expand my melodic structure and wordplay, and try and trim the fat off of it, as he used to tell me. Just trim the fat off the lyrics.
Yeah.
No filler words. Get to the point. And it made me think of different ways to write. So sometimes I'd write with just a drum beat, or sometimes I'd write with a metronome. And I mean, you could run the gamut on ways to write. I love, I'll say this and we can go to the next one. Taylor Swift put at the end of, I think it was 1989, she put 3 voice memos on of different like scats and writing things, and she had one that was her playing the beat that her producer sent her and her scatting over the top of it, and it was the melody to like one of the hit singles on it that went multi-platinum. And then she had one that was her at her piano in her living room coming up with it herself, and then she had another one that was like her and someone else combined, like the guy hummed the melody and she wrote the words or something. And I thought that was so neat. And I don't think it came on every record. So if you bought it and you don't know what I'm talking about, go online and look for it, because it's so cool as a songwriter to see someone be that vulnerable on a record that millions of people are going to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. She definitely doesn't mind being vulnerable, especially with her fans.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this new EP that you got. Was there a certain theme that you wanted to put throughout the whole EP, or were you specific with each song?
There wasn't an overall theme. If you talk to some of the people that worked on the record, they'd probably say positivity as a generic theme.
Okay.
But we kind of went into it on a song-by-song basis. We ended up writing like 13 or 14 songs for it, and we cut it down to just the 4 singles because it's just a short EP. We wanted to do 4 singles with 4 features. I'm good friends with all the features that are on the record. I did 2 songs with Brian, and we actually wrote a couple more that just got cut by a DJ out in LA. And it was just kind of I don't know, we all knew each other. We all wrote all 4 songs together. We just, I don't know. Matter of fact, the first song I wrote with Sam, who's my producer, was Never Be Forgot. And the second song we ever wrote together was Skyscraper. And we were like, well, we're 2 for 2. We should probably keep writing. So about 10 songs down the road, we stumbled upon Obsessions. And then, 2 more, we linked up with Ben and knocked out Iconic. But I forgot about that. The first song we ever wrote together was Never Be Forgot. So that was a pretty neat experience.
Yeah, it's cool. And co-writing, the cool thing about that too is you get to you said a neat experience, but you get to experience something you won't otherwise on your own, as well as try different things. So I think that's a great piece of advice to people trying to songwrite, is try writing with someone else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was reading, I think it was a John C. Maxwell book. It was like How Successful People Think or something like that. And it was talking about great thinkers don't create the idea. They take a good idea and make it better. And I think that's at the essence of songwriting, because you get two really creative people in a room, or three or four, or I've even written with 5 or 6 people at one time. Gets a little hectic. I like the 2 or 3, but if you and I were to write a song right now on the radio, you'd say something and it would spark something in my head, and I would come back with something else, and that might trigger a thought in your head and remind you of something else that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. I love co-writing with people.
Totally. All right, so here's a question for you. Who would win a fight between Spider-Man and Batman?
I'd say Batman, because that's who I liked first when I was a kid. I had a little Batmobile that shot the grappling hooks out the front and everything.
That's awesome. So what's your superpower?
My superpower? I'd say songwriting if I wasn't being goofy. If I was trying to be really goofy, I'd say my superpower is looking a lot better at football than I was when I played in college.
It's funny.
If you looked at me on the sideline, you thought I was a D1 athlete, but if you watched me on the field, I definitely was not.
Okay. What position did you play?
I played middle linebacker.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. What's your go-to comfort food?
It's got to be pizza.
Yeah, pizza's
absolutely,
awesome.
Without a doubt, it's got to be pizza. I grew up in Jersey.
Okay.
There's nothing. I mean, I order Papa John's because I live in Savannah, Georgia now, but pizza's the go-to every time.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that, man. I'm in Chicago, so I hear you.
Oh yeah. I'm already jealous.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to hear an excerpt of one of your songs. What's the title to this song?
This is the single off the record. It's iconic.
It's like I'm losing my mind. I didn't come to meet someone, now I'm hurting for lines. The way your hips shake, now it's hard to decide if I'ma roll with the guys of the dice. I can't control it. It's like the club's on fire and I'm trying to find the words that you desire. You got me stuttering on what words to say, so I'm begging for you, just show me the light. You got me losing it, don't wanna make you mine too forward. I just gotta take my time, I'ma slow it down and rewrite my lines. Hold up girl, the pleasure's mine. You and me, we can dip for a nightcap. I don't wanna stunt, say yes, I really like that. Let's hit the road, tell your friends you'll be right back. You ain't lying, you just know where the fun's at.
Don't blame me for what you make me do. Your body lights a room, you're iconic.
Let's go.
Won't take long for me to make a move. Wanna get up next to you, you're iconic.
I'm stuck on you, girl, in the way you shake it, excuse me. That's a little bit flagrant, don't mind me, I'm a little bit wasted. Get down, cause you know I let the bass hit. Get back up, let's travel on vacation. Coast to coast, I'm talking every different nation. Let's hit the road, pick a radio station. Party all night like I need salvation. I'm losing it, don't wanna make you mine too forward. I just gotta take my time, I'ma slow it down and rewrite my lines. Hold up, girl, the pleasure's mine. Whoa, time flies, I'm way ahead of myself. I'm talking crazy stuff, put it up on the shelf. Let's rewind a bit and take it back to the jump off. You two find the beat by yourself.
Don't blame me for what you make me do. Your body lights a room, you're iconic.
You're so iconic, baby.
Won't take long for me to make a move. Wanna get up next to you, you're iconic.
Take a leap, see faith, I got it, feel the beat. This ain't ironic, you and me. First take iconic, run the world, we're supersonic. We the ones they won't forget, I promise that they break your necks. Looking at you, cause girl, you run this room and you ain't breaking sweats. Got me looking at you. I can't hold back.
Don't blame me for what you make me do. Your body likes a room, you're iconic, iconic. Won't take long for me to make a move. Wanna get a mess of you, you're iconic, iconic.
You got me zoned. You so fine, girl.
You're iconic, iconic.
Can't control it. Get up, get up.
You're iconic, iconic.
That's a really cool song, Stuart. Tell me something about that song I'm never going to forget.
We redid the tracking behind it 3 times before we landed on the final song.
Okay.
It sounded different 3 times. I don't know, something different that you'll never forget about that song. As a songwriter, I put the pre-chorus in the wrong spot on purpose.
Okay.
And as a fan, I'd say that's the most fun song I've ever written to date.
Do you find yourself, I know like my journey's been 5 years, and my first year I said, oh, wow, that's the best song I've ever written. And then my second year I said, oh, do you think you're going to eclipse that song?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've already had that experience like what you're talking about. My first single, which is actually still on Spotify and iTunes and all that jazz, Borrowed Time. When I wrote that song, God, that was 4.5 years ago. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Nashville, and I had this guy, Matt, living on my couch because he would split the rent with me. And so it just made it cheaper. And
Yeah.
I remember I was writing the song with my friend Renee, and my buddy Eric made this like beat in Ableton, and like he was trying to teach himself how to be a producer because he was really good at piano, and he was like, well, if I can do piano, I can be a producer and, you know, make like these EDM things. And so he sent me this thing over, and it was just like a 30-second loop, and I ran into my room and I started writing, and I came out, I read the first verse, and it was just a rap verse, and I read it, and I looked up, and Renee was crying, and she was like, I've got to write this song with you. And a couple weeks later, we had that. I mean, I still love the song, but I know I can write better songs, and I know I can get better production, and I know I can get to the point quicker and trim the fat off the lyrics. But at the time, I was like, man, this is it. You know, this is all I got. And then, you know, some time passes, and you write something else, and you know how it goes.
Yeah. You know what's cool listening to you is the people that I've spoken to or interacted with that are always, because I'm the same way, they're hungry. They always want to get better. Their lyrics, their vocals, their music, their producing. To me, you can almost sense that hunger that they have, and you know they're going to keep getting better. Whereas a lot of the other people I talk to, they're just like, hey, this isn't on the radio because I need $2 million to do it, and I don't have a label, and it's all BS. And to me, I tried not to get stuck in that rut, and I think a lot of people do, and listening to your story hopefully will inspire them because, you know, even where you're at, you're still trying to get better, and that's so iconic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Matt, tell the listeners where they can find out more information about you and where they can purchase your music.
If you want to stay up to date with whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm traveling to, wherever I'm shooting at, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, but Instagram is the main. I just link it to all my other pages. So if you're on Instagram, it's at Stuart Anson. There'll be a link to my Spotify, to the EP on my bio, and it'll be uploaded to iTunes and Google Play, RDO. We're actually submitting it to we're in the process of submitting it to Pandora. They're the only one that still has that submission process, which I like. I'm glad they do, if I'm being completely honest. But if you can't find it, DM me on Instagram and I'll send you a link. But it should be in the bio.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stuart, for being on the show.
I really appreciate being on it.
Okay, you're awesome, man.
Thank you for listening to The Songwriter Show. To keep the momentum going, head over to www.songwritershow.com and join our free music community of artists, songwriters, and producers. That's www.songwritershow.com.